What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Bench Mob podcast. My name's Danko, and this is my co-host Marcus. It's a new podcast that we've brought out. This is the first episode, and we're both massive basketball and NBA enthusiasts, and we thought what better way to bring in that passion that we have into a podcast and an open forum. So hopefully you guys enjoy it.
Guys, welcome. Here we have it, the Bench Mob podcast. Here with my boy Danko. Me and Danko, we don't actually know each other IRL, but we've been talking over the net, talking on the YouTube. I actually hit him up on YouTube in the comment section. We decided to put this together. We're very excited about it. Hope you guys enjoy it. But quick introduction to me. My name's Marcus, obviously. 21 years old, massive NBA fan, bit of a nuffy, a Lakers fan, but at the end of the day, controversy is what we're here for. So I bring that to the table. And I might not always have the most popular opinion, but at the end of the day, that makes content. So that's enough said from me. Danko, I've gone on a bit of a rampage there, but introduce yourself.
Controversy brings clicks, though. That's the main thing, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, that's what's going to bring the clicks in. People always like the opinionated co-hosts. You look at Stephen A. Smith, you look at Kendrick Perkins, guys like that. They're always got these really outlandish takes, but at the end of the day, that's what brings the clicks in. I think that's what brings the popularity and the viewership at the end of the day. So a little bit about myself. I'm 28 as of next week, so I'm getting old. Big NBA fan like Marcus. Yeah, appreciate it, brother. So big NBA fan like Marcus. I've been around the sport for a long time, and I've always had a passion for it. So I thought, what better way to bring it in, like I said, than to have a podcast and sort of just talk a little bit about it and see what people think about our takes and what we have to say about it. So basically today's episode, what we're going to talk about in this topic is all about the awards, I guess, the predictions that we have for all the awards that will be announced post-season, or at the conclusion of the season, I should say. So we'll be talking about the all-rookie teams, the all-defensive teams, and all the NBA teams, the Rookie of the Year, Sixth Man of the Year, Most Improved, Defensive Player of the Year, and MVP. So there's going to be some controversial opinions here, especially with the MVP race at the moment. It's been very debated heavily in media as of recent times, and we had one favorite in Nikola Jokic who looked like he was going to run away with it. And now the media has completely turned that whole narrative around and is basically saying that Joel Embiid's a lock for it now. So it's going to be interesting to see where that all plays out, and you'll see our predictions coming up very soon. To start it off, what do you reckon we go along with? We'll start with the all rookie teams here. Yeah, we'll go. Start with the all NBA second team first. All rookie second team.
My justification for my team, I haven't really put together reasons for every single individual player, but what I have done, I've done honourable mentions. So I'll start off with the guys who I have in my second team first before I get into honourable mentions. So at the point guard for the Indiana Pacers, I have Andrew Nembhard. At the shooting guard position for the Atlanta Hawks, I have AJ Griffin. So I know he's a small forward shooting guard, kind of like a Jimmy Butler mold, but I got him at the 2. At the 3, we got Keegan Murray. Don't really need to justify why, but we all know Keegan's like the beam. Like, Kings are doing fantastic, and he's given you everything you want from a rookie, so big ups Keegan. At the power forward, Jeremy Sohan, who's put together an amazing 2 months. He's been really good for the Spurs, despite them being terrible. And at the center position, we have none other than Jalen Duran. So yeah, that's my second team.
I'm curious to see who you've got in the honourable mention list, because a couple of guys that you've mentioned in your second team, I don't actually have them in my second team. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how you structured your first team and who you have in the honourable mentions missing out. So all right, my second team, it looks a bit different. There are similarities, but it's slightly different to your second team. So I've got Jaden Ivey at my point guard, or just in the team itself. Yeah, my justification for not having him in the first team is, I think it's just purely based off the record of the Detroit Pistons. I know he's been very productive this year, and he's had an amazing rookie season. But I think there's, based off how they vote and how I'm using my voters cap here, I know that they don't really go based off positions normally in these all rookie teams. It's more about, what they think in terms of the ladder for the voting. So I went with Jaden Ivey there. For the other guard, or for one of the other players, I've got Andrew Nemhard. It was a line ball between him and one of the other blokes who would be in this team, which is in my honourable mention. I'm not going to mention it. This Andrew Nemhard, and I think Nemhard being part of a team like the Pacers, where they are contending, or they were contending for that play-in spot, and obviously his efficiency when he was in the lineup playing over 30 minutes a game, I think he's been a very handy backup point guard, or a backup option for Tyrese Halliburton when he's been out of the lineup, and also when he's gone to the bench. So I think it's a justified pick there. I have Tari Eason as another pick in the second team. A justification could be made to that he could have been in the first team. I definitely think so. But again, the record of the Rockets, the fact that they are tanking, and they're losing a lot of games, doesn't take away from the fact that he's been very productive this year, and he's been great on both sides of the ball. But I think personally, just with, again, the record's holding him back there a little bit, personally speaking. So again, he was line ball to be in the first team, but I had to sneak him into the second, unfortunately. And my final two picks, I got Jeremy Sohan. Again, you could argue he could have been first team, but the record now, with the records being taken into account so much, whether it's all-star selections, all NBA selections, it didn't really factor in as much back in the day. But now it's been so focused in on the record that a certain team has in terms of the impact does that player have. Is it just empty stats? Are they only productive because they're on this team? You know what I mean? So that's the reason why I have him in my second team. But I think out of all the players in the draft that just went by, I think he honestly has up there with the most potential in this draft, based off the fact that he's 19 years old, and he's just got all the tools where I think he can definitely develop. And under Greg Popovich, if he stays with the Spurs, I think he's going to have that Kawhi kind of ascension into stardom. And my final pick was similar to yours at the center, Jalen Duren. So I think he's come along in leaps and bounds, and I think per 36 minutes he's averaging about close to 13 rebounds a game, 1.3 blocks. He's a rebounding machine.
Dwight Howard.
Yeah, that's who I get the vibe off. Whenever I watch him play, he's got that Dwight Howard body, that explosiveness. So he's definitely...
He's like 18 as well. Well, 19,
what was that?
18.
Yeah,
So
that's
young.
it. Yeah, 100%.
He's insane.
And then, so that's my second team. So if you want, you can share with us your first team, and then we can discuss and see who you've put in there instead. I kind of have a feeling who you might have in there, but I guess we'll see.
Point guard, none other, Jaden Ivey. I think he's had a very solid rookie season, although there are some flaws in his game. Obviously, he's not the greatest shooter. He's not necessarily a primary playmaker, but with that being said, he showed great signs without Cade. And Killian's in and out of form. Ivy stepped up in certain games, so I think he deserves to be the starting point guard in the all-rookie first team. At the shooting guard position, Benedict Mathurin, I don't need to justify why. Arguably, top 3, top 2 in Rookie of the Year race. He's had a great season, and he comes off the bench. But, yeah, he's efficient every single night, or most nights. And he's given you like 16 to 20 points off the bench any given night. So he's my shooting guard. At the small forward, Jalen Williams for the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think he's had a really impressive rookie season. And specifically, like after the All-Star break, he's really, really stepped up. And then power forward, we got Banchero. Probably one of the best seasons since LeBron's rookie year. And then at the center position, surprise pick. Like, I would not expect this bloke at the start of the season to be all-rookie first team. But Walker Kessler, he's been really solid for them. And as they push for the play-in, he's a vital piece for that Utah team. So I think he deserves to be in that all-rookie first team. But yeah, that wraps up my team. Keen to hear yours, but...
Yeah, just going back to Walker Kessler, the fact that he's averaging more block shots per game than Rudy Gobert in less minutes, it's definitely...
Who would have thought, man?
Yeah, I mean, you could sort of see it at Auburn last year. He averaged about 4.9 blocks per game in college, so he was a
4.9.
Yeah, so he was a shot blocking machine. But obviously, the NBA is a different ball game. So the fact that he came in and had that impact on the defensive side of the ball straight away is obviously. I think that's probably a bit more impressive in the fact that the defensive schemes and the players that you do face, they're more athletic to be able to block the amount of shots that he has. And obviously, even after January, I think, or after the All-Star break, he's averaging upwards of 3 blocks a game. So, again, it's a credit to him and how he's been able to handle the rigors of the NBA game in limited minutes as well and be able to be as productive as he is. So, definitely an exciting player to come for the future. My first team, anyway, I'll get into it. So, again, I'll go in no positional order, but I'll just sort of go in terms of, where I think the Rookie of the Year race, how it'll play out. So, no particular order. Like I said, this will be... I've got Jalen Williams. Again, just his production, like you mentioned, past January. Really solid, very efficient. He's leading the league in steals since January. He's putting it together on both sides of the ball, and he's a key piece to that Oklahoma City team, and in terms of them being able to push for a possible playoff spot, not just a play-in spot, because they're 7th in the West at the moment, and only continuing to put together great performances. My second player that I've got is Paolo Banchero. Again, like you mentioned, it's pretty self-explanatory. He's had an amazing season as the number one option on that Orlando Magic team from the get-go. He's had defensive schemes thrown at him. He's had the toughest matchups night in, night out on the other end of the floor in terms of the guys guarding him and having to put up the production that he has. I mean, he had a bit of a slump last month, but, in the sense that he still continues to produce and average around that 20 points per game mark. It's a credit to him and that he's been able to adapt to the NBA game right away. Third player, I got Benedict Mathurin. Again, self-explanatory, off the bench, flamethrower, microwave. Been a really important piece to that Indiana Pacers team and has provided that spark off the bench. Instant scoring, athleticism, intensity, excitement. I think he's going to be a really big player to come in for years to come for the Pacers. And the last two picks, well, one of the picks is a bit different to yours. You had Ivy in here in this Raw Rookie first team. I had Keegan Murray. Justification for this, again, he's a key player and a key cog in this Kings team that's currently 3rd in the West, was 2nd at one point before they lost yesterday. But again, it's just the consistency with his jump shot. He's obviously not averaging as many points as Ivy, but he's averaging it on 40% from 3, about 45% from the field. And he's averaging it on about 6 attempts from 3 per game. So it's not like he's shooting only 1 or 2. So he's definitely an important piece to that team. And I think so long as he continues to improve his ball handling and his other facets of his game and more aggressive in terms of being that player that can, be the number one option, I think he's going to continue to improve and continue to grow. And my last pick, which was exactly like yours, was Walker Kessler. again, come on in leaps and bounds. Came out of nowhere to really make this all-rookie first team, and it's well-deserved though. And I think, the way his production's been in the limited minutes, rebounding, putting the ball in the basket when he needs to, and obviously on the defensive side of the ball, it's self-explanatory. So we had pretty similar teams there, but I think the only difference we had was, I think you didn't have Tari Eason, is that right?
Yeah, I didn't have Tari Eason, and Keegan obviously made your first team. He made my second team. But besides that, I thought it would be a massive call leaving out Jabari Smith Jr. and he's been inconsistent, but I thought recency bias would kind of take a hold and one of us would have had him in our teams, but we both had him out.
That's the guy I was weighing up between him and Nemhard, to be honest. It was out of him or Nemhard to make that second team, and I was weighing it up for a fair bit of time. And I think he's come on in leaps and bounds. And I think a lot of it, to be honest, it's come down to also the fact that he plays with guys like Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr., who are synonymous for chucking up shots and, not really utilizing him in the offense. Yeah, so I think that probably didn't help him in terms of his production, and sort of not knowing where he fitted into the offense. But I think he's definitely got a lot of potential, and he's shown in those last month of the season that he can definitely be a star player in this league. But it's just going to be a matter of obviously the situation and who he's around in terms of Jalen Green and Kevin Porter. What do they decide to do with them in the future? Whether James Harden returns to the Rockets, which is been rumored.
Well, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. If that happened, I don't know why necessarily on Harden's end why he would want to come back.
He apparently just loves it.
D'Antoni's left. He just loves the city.
Loves the city, loves the culture, loves that franchise, because again, it was where he molded into a star and became the player that he was. Without the Rockets, you kind of don't have James Harden of today,
I could see it in a couple seasons from now, but it just seems like he's still he could be All NBA this year, and he has so much to give for a championship team. It's please, I'm not even a Harden fan, but don't go back to the Rockets and just it just wouldn't make sense at this point to me in his career. But yeah, now with Jabari, I feel like all he has to do is be able to put the ball on the floor, and once he gets that down, sky's the limit. But I just don't think he's all rookie yet.
And the efficiency side of it as well. He's shooting 40% and low 30s, if not in the 20s for his threes. So. Again, it's just the efficiency side of it, playing in a team that's obviously not competing or contending for any playoff or play-in spots. It's kind of it's pretty justified that he doesn't end up getting into any of those all-rookie teams. So I think we're pretty fair in our analysis and assess takes. I think it's only going to get more controversial as we get along through this the old games. This one 100%. Here, it actually was a struggle for me to try and pick 10 solid defenders, because there's a lot of defenders out there.
All NBA.
And this one's a tough one because they don't really just pick it based off statistics and based off how many steals or blocks someone averages. It's all about
gave me sleepless nights.
How well you defend a certain player, what field goal percentage you hold certain star players to.
They don't.
Can you rotate? Can you help defend? There's a lot of criteria here that comes into the picture. So this was tough for me to decide. But did you want me to start with my all-defensive second team? So now on to the all-defensive teams. So this is a tough one to sort of break down because there's a lot of variables that come into play. It's not strictly just based off statistics. So obviously other awards, you look at the box score, you look at what they're averaging, but it can be very deceiving because sometimes a guy might have X amount of steals but might not necessarily be a good defender. He might just be gambling a lot. So there's a lot of other variables that come to play. So this is a tough one to sort of decipher and to work out who you'd actually have in your all defensive teams. But Marcus, take it away. Who have you got in your all defensive second team?
So with the all defensive team, going along with that, at the beginning of creating this list, I was aware, but I completely forgot, I promise you. I thought that there was a third, second, and first team. So in my notes, I put together All NBA third team. But if you want me to quickly just go through that,
man.
I don't have to. I'll just do it real quick. So at the point guard, the made up All NBA third team, we got Javon Carter, and then shooting guard, I think Donovan Mitchell stepped up a lot, so I just slotted him in there. Does he deserve it? I don't know, but he's in that team. And then Jimmy Butler, small forward, Jaden McDaniels, power forward, Jared Allen at the center position. So yeah, bit of a nothing team right there, but nevertheless, we've done that.
That's
so
it. It's extra credits.
Yeah, exactly. Extra credit points. But yeah, going along with my second team at the point guard position, this man needs no introduction. Alex Caruso. I think he's had a very solid defensive season, and I think he deserves to be in the team. So I've put him in there. And with the loss of Lonzo Ball, Chicago as a defensive team, I believe they're still pretty solid, and partially because of that is the partial reason because of that is this man right here, Alex Caruso. So he's my point guard. At the shooting guard position, we have Anthony Edwards, who we all know at Georgia, he had massive defensive upside. He was supposed to come into the NBA and be this dominant defender, which he wasn't, but I really do feel like now he's kind of come into his own, and he's really owned being a defender, and he's always guarding the best player, or most of the time guarding the best guard, and yeah, he has all the tools. He's always in the passing lanes. He's very long, no homo, but yeah, I think he deserves to be in the old defensive second team. So he's my shooting guard. At the small forward, OG Anunoby, who, yeah, I think he's in the race for Defensive Player of the Year, unofficially type of thing. He's kind of top 5, but he's another guy who really goes under the radar, I think. And then the power forward, Evan Mobley, who I really wanted to put in my first team. I really, really wanted to, but the two big men ahead of him, I just think have had better defensive years, so I've had to put him in my second team. And at the center position, Bam Adebayo, where do I even start? He also deserves to be in that first team, but with that being said, the two guys I have ahead of him, I just don't see him, being in that first team ahead of those two guys. But yeah, that's my second team All NBA defense.
I can respect it. So, I can respect those picks. See, I went a bit of a different route. I went more more of the positionless kind of thing, more just rating them as defenders as such. So, I mean, it doesn't really matter which path we went down, because at the end of the day, they both work. Yeah. But mine might not be exactly matched to yours, or they, it might be slightly different on the basis that, we probably did these slightly different. But that's all in all, it's still fine, because at the end of the day, they're all great defenders that you listed. And I liked the Anthony Edwards take, because I think he's even owned up to it to say that he wants the best matchup every single night, and he wants to show that he can be a two-way player rather than just be known as a guy that can put the ball in the hole. So to go along with that, my all defensive second team, my selections are again no positionless, so no position order, and it's all positionless based here. So I'll start with Giannis Antetokounmpo. I could have put him in the first team. I honestly could have, but there's 5 guys ahead of him in my opinion. And this was honestly could have put him as my last pick in the first team, and he's arguably in the running for Defensive Player of the Year. But that's just the level of defenders that have been in the league at the moment, and have stepped up a lot. Guys that have sort of come out of the blue with all these their defensive presence, you know what I mean? So I think it was tough to really argue the case for Giannis to be in the first team, but at the same time, you can obviously put forward his claim to say why he's one of the best defenders in the league. And not saying anyone in this second team doesn't deserve to necessarily be in the first team. I just think, that's just the level of the defense that's been played by these guys all year. So it's sort of just, it's based off this season more so than a complete body of work, if that makes sense. Second on my list is Jaden McDaniels. You had him in your third team. With this guy here, he's taken up the challenge every night of guarding the best player on the opposition team. Similar to Anthony Edwards, I think, his versatility in being able to switch, defend positions one, or probably all the way to 5, to be honest. It's a credit to him. His length, his quickness of lateral movement, being able to rotate, being able to help. And obviously saw those games where he's guarded Luka and Kyrie, and he took that matchup head on and really made Luka uncomfortable, which you don't normally see. And I think if you look at his field goal percentage that he holds his opponents to, it'd be right up there with the best in the league. And he's only going to get better because he's only really started to come into his own. My third pick, OG Anunoby. I think he's, again, in the running, in the discussion earlier in the year to be the Defensive Player of the Year. He leads the league in steals. He's a pest in the passing lanes. But there's clips of him, multiple clips I've seen where he anticipates a cutter and then goes to rotate and get into the lane to be able to contest the shot. His defensive IQ is through the roof. And again, you could argue the case that he could have possibly been on the first team, but I think he's making a case that he's one of the better defenders in the league now, for sure. My fourth pick, I've got Drew Holiday. Again, a lot of these guys in this second team could have honestly been in the first team, but Drew Holiday, you know what you're going to get from him. He's helped that Bucks defense be one of the best defensive teams in the NBA, alongside Giannis and Brook Lopez, and that's really what they, I guess, base their game off. Their defensive lockdown turns their offense even better than what it could be. So again, it was a tough decision leaving him out of the first team because he's been such a good defender over the years. But there were 5 other defenders that were better than him this season. So my last pick, I've got Alex Caruso. I was honestly weighing up between him and Joel Embiid for this pick. I could have put Joel in this. It was tough, but I think just with Alex Caruso, it was a tough one because he has been a really good defender, and he's definitely making his case over this last month or so to be selected in those teams. But I think Alex Caruso, he's got one of the highest defensive ratings in the NBA. He's just intensity on defense, obviously wanting always to shut down the best opponent on the opposition, and I think he with the loss, like you said, of Lonzo Ball and filling that void, I think he's done an amazing job, and I think it's more than deserving that he gets on an all-defensive team because, again, without him, they might not even be in the position that they are now. You know what I mean? Zach LaVine's not a great defender. DeMar DeRozan's so focused on offense that, he doesn't really defend all the time on the other end. So having a guy like Alex Caruso can come in and be intense around the ball and, be a pest to the on-ball defense, it's a no-brainer to have him in this team. That leaves the all-defensive first team. So I'll let you reveal that now.
Yeah. Now, like with what you said with Joel Embiid, I really wanted to put him in my teams as well. But, it's just so many, dominant bigs, I feel like, nowadays on the defensive end, as there always has. But they're just, so versatile, like Evan Mobley, Bam Adebayo. And then you got, I don't know, even to an extent, this guy didn't make my team, but, Draymond Green's still doing it. He can guard, 1 through 5 probably in the modern NBA. And then, like Miles Turner, for example, he missed my teams, but like there's so many dudes. And then, like Herb Jones, like there's just so many good, I guess, power forward centers who can just guard 1 through 5s in this modern day NBA. But moving on, anyway, those guys didn't make it, but the guys who did make it, kicking it off with Drew Holiday at the point guard position. I can't even explain how good of a defender Drew Holiday is. Like, he does everything you want. He's super strong. He gets in passing lanes. He can guard in the post. Every single night. Like, this isn't a one-off thing. He's doing this every single game. And, I think Drew deserves to be All-NBA first. Shooting guard position. I've done this through positions again, but Marcus Smart, last year's Defensive Player of the Year, I think he doesn't have to carry the same load he did last year with the inclusions of Malcolm Brogdon. And Jaylen Brown as well. Like, they have a lot of good defenders on that team. The next player we have is actually Jaylen Brown. I think I just have him. I could have put Anthony Edwards over him. I could have put OG in my first team, but I've put Jaylen Brown. I just really rate the guy as a wing defender. And although maybe he's had a tiny bit of a decline since his sophomore season or third season in the league, I do think that he's still a very valuable defender. And if Jaylen Brown's locking up their best player and you got JT and Jaylen Brown on the other end, like Celtics, they're more chance to win than not. And I think that's what makes them title contenders is Jaylen Brown's ability to defend at such a high level. At the power forward position, we got Jaren Jackson Jr. And although he hasn't been healthy the entire season, when he has been, he's just absolutely killed it. He's leading the league in blocks, I believe.
Yeah. And
he's starting to get in a bit of foul trouble in recent time. But, I think for the majority of the season, he hasn't been getting in foul trouble. And, he's just very valuable. Another guy who can probably guard 3 through to 3, the small forward through to the center position. I think he gives them a lot of X factor there, especially if Ja comes back. Grizzlies, I don't know if they're title contenders, but they're definitely a team you'd be fearful in the West. And then at the center position, we have Brook Lopez. Never in my life did I think I would have Brook Lopez in my all-defensive first team, but he's there. Just a guy who's not necessarily the fastest on his feet or great in help side defense, but on a one-on-one matchup, he guards the post, he blocks shots, and I think he's done a very solid job this season on the defensive end, and I think he deserves to be all defensive first team. So that wraps up my defensive first team. Keen, interested to hear what yours looks like, but
you're gonna be a bit surprised again because I sort of went down. I know how they vote for this. They don't normally go by position, so I kind of went down that particular path when I went with my voting.
I've done it wrong. I've done it wrong.
Honestly, you can go either way. You could have 5 guards, you could have 5 bigs, you could have 3 guards and 2 bigs. It's sort of just dependent on who's dominating in the
Giannis
NBA
is a big
front.
out though.
Yeah, it is. So that was
looking
tough.
back, I would do it differently.
Did you not put him? Did you put him in your either of your teams or not?
No, I didn't put him. He didn't make the third team second. I don't know why I forgot about him. It's not ideal, but
it's one of those things. I think it's hard because if you look at guys like
forgot.
Giannis, Drew Holiday, and Brook Lopez, when you have such a dominant defensive team, you sort of take attention from each other. Like, for example, you could say that Giannis being a great defender is because he's got 2 genuine defensive clamps and defensive stoppers on his team. You know what I mean? Like, that's where the argument comes into play that you could leave him off. If it was on his own and he was putting up the production that he did, you could then make the case and make the argument for him a bit more. But it's a tough one. I think I can, out of all the teams that I had to pick, the all defensive teams were probably the hardest ones in my opinion.
It's so hard.
Because it's just like I said, there's a lot of variables that come into play. So, anyways, going into my all defensive first team, again, no positions, no particular order. We'll go with Brook Lopez. This is a guy, again, who's leading the league in total block shots, not blocks per game, but in terms of total, because Jaren Jackson's missed a number of games, he's leading the league in total block shots. That I think he's got about 170, if I'm not mistaken. He also leads the league in shot contests, so he's got about 1,170 odd shot contests. The second best player in that category is Evan Mobley. I think he's around about, or Nick Claxton, he's got about 750 odd, which is a 400 shot difference in terms of how many he's contesting. And again, that's a testament to him and how good that defense is when he's getting to that many shots and affecting them. Whether he blocks them or not is a different story, but the fact that he's getting to them and making the shot difficult for the opposition, that definitely helps his case. And his defensive win shares, I think he's like 6th in defensive win shares in the NBA at the moment. So he's well and truly deserving of a first team all defensive spot. And that game that he had the other day where he nearly had a triple-double with blocks, tied the franchise record. That was a remarkable display from Brook. And again, for him to be doing it at this age, I think is just a credit to him. Second player, like you touched on, was Jaren Jackson Jr. Not much to be said about that. He's limited minutes that he does play because he does get himself into foul trouble and obviously not being fully healthy. But when he is on the court, he's productive, he's intense, his recovery, defense, his ability to block shots and make life difficult for anyone coming into the painted area is a credit to him. And he's right up there for the Defensive Player of the Year race. Third guy I got on the list is Evan Mobley. Again, I'm going very big here, but they've been the very dominant defensive players this year. So Evan Mobley, again, helping that Cleveland Cavaliers team push up to the 4th seed and being a key piece on that defensive front, like a defensive anchor as such, to help the other guys, that might not be the best defenders, I guess keeping them accountable and obviously doing his part as well, blocking shots and affecting shots and making life tough for the opposition. Fourth player on the list, again, self-explanatory, Bam Adebayo. He's going to be a regular on these lists for seasons to come. Again, the anchor along with Jimmy Butler for that Miami Heat defense. Makes life tough on any opponent. His quickness allows him to switch onto smaller guards and have effectiveness there in guarding them. And I think without him, his numbers might be great, but again, it's all the other stuff, the little things, the variables that come into play when you're assessing these defensive teams. That's the reason why he gets a nod on the first team. And Nick Claxton, it's a surprise pick. But I think just with what he's done this year, he's come out of nowhere really. Not just his defensive game, but his offensively he's come on in leaps and bounds. And I think just what he's done in terms of being, up there in terms of block shots, shot contests, his ability, his size at 6'11", to be able to move the way he does and to be able to switch onto smaller guys and to guards, get it right up on the perimeter, block shots. I think he's more than deserving of the first team. He was probably one guy that I was weighing up whether to put him in the second team and to put Giannis in the first team or to put a guy like OG Anunoby in the first team or Drew Holiday. But I think based off the fact that it is positionless, I was like, I had to put him in because I think he's had a really productive season on the defensive front. And again, if it wasn't for the circus that Brooklyn brought along with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant leaving, I think he probably would have got a little bit more attention to it. You know what I mean? The fact that what he was doing, I think he's sort of flown under the radar a little bit based off the fact that he's not the biggest piece of news that's come out of Brooklyn this year. That's my all defensive first team again. Your honourable mentions are probably what you would have had in the third team anyway. But there's a few guys.
I have a couple.
A couple extra. Did you
Like
on
Nick? Yeah. Oh, but yeah. So obviously, Giannis wasn't on my list, and I actually haven't even put him in notable mentions, just because I had. Maybe my reasoning was because I had Brook Lopez, Drew Holiday, in that first team. I just thought it was like too much to put the entire not entire, but 3 Milwaukee players. So I haven't even put him in there, which is, looking back, like Giannis is definitely more than deserving to be in a notable mentions, but I have Nick Claxton there, who you have had in your first team, who's more than, like, if I was doing this differently and had, out of positions type thing where it's just the 5 best defenders in the league, second, he 100% would be in the teams, either second or first, but I kind of went that different route, and then I got Joel Embiid's there, Miles Turner's there, Josh Hart's there, Herbert Jones is there, and then Bruce Brown, I think. He's a pretty valuable defender for them, so I put him in the notable mentions, but I don't think he deserves to be in all defense. I just think he's a valuable asset for them, so I've chucked him in.
For sure. You could even make a case for a guy like Derek White from the Celtics. He's almost arguably been a better defender this season than Marcus Smart. If you look at his defensive rating when he's on the floor compared to when he's off, in terms of what the Celtics bring from a defensive front, he's a very underrated defender. Again, I don't know if you have him in your team, but again, he's surprised a lot of guys with how good of a defender he has become, and I think that's probably a testament to what the Celtics organization brings when you go there and you're obviously a part of that system. An expectation that you have to be a Celtic is to be relentless on the defensive side of the ball, and I think it was instilled with Ime Udoka last year. Obviously with what it went on there, Joe Mazzulla's come in and he's instilled that as well, so there's definitely arguments to be made about that, but I think I was pretty happy with the teams that I did put together. Again, I might have been able to reshuffle a few guys from the first and second team and swap them around, but for the most part, I think I did pick the 10 best defenders in basketball at the moment for this season that went by, at least.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I'm trying to pinpoint something I could debate about and just get not argue, but just pinpoint something. But it truly was probably the best 10 defenders in the game. So I can't really dispute any team you've done so far. But
we'll see. There might be some. This is where the controversy starts now. I'm just thinking
all NBA.
Yeah, I'm just thinking though, because I feel like if we give away our first All NBA first team votes out, or who we think is going to be All NBA first team, that'll give away our MVP vote. So now I'm thinking, do we go and start to announce the rest of the awards first, and then we go into the All NBA team?
I don't. It might with yours. I don't know if it will with mine. That's the thing.
All right.
It might.
Because usually,
no. We'll do awards.
Yeah.
And then we'll get it all, because All NBA first team, to me at least, that's more valuable than being 6-man most improved player, all that stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
I reckon if people are watching this, hypothetically, they want to see the all first team last, I reckon. So I reckon we'll do that.
All right.
What do you reckon?
Yeah, I agree. So
most improved?
Yeah, we'll go most improved. I think this one, there's a few candidates involved here. You can make the claim for Jalen Brunson, guys like Tyrese Halliburton, Larry Markkinen, obviously. He's the front runner for the award. And they've all been pretty productive in terms of the improvement they've shown from the season prior to this season. So, yeah, it's a tough one. And even Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, SGA, you could make the claim that, yes, he obviously showed what he could do last year, and he's taken an incredible step, and, that could be considered most improved. but you could kind of see the progression with SGA. I feel like he was on his way to superstardom, and getting to
before,
that.
Way
yeah,
before.
correct. I remember going to the Clippers and Wizards in 2018 when he was first drafted. And he was coming off the bench. I actually bought an SGA jersey, and then within a year,
that's sick because it looks sick.
Yeah, because it was the City Edition one that had like the LA with like the speed lines. You know, the one that like
Yeah.
I'm like
that one's sick.
I was like fuck yeah. So I got an SGA jersey, and then next minute he gets traded. PG and Kawhi come there. I'm like, oh, what the hell? But it's like it's a cool throwback. If he ever does win an MVP in the future, it's like you got a throwback jersey from the LA Clippers.
100%.
So, yeah, going back to it, sorry. I went a bit off topic there.
No, it's fine. No, it's
so, yeah, the award here, it's pretty subjective. It depends on how you want to assess, what you would consider most improved. And whether you think someone is so unexpected that they've made the jump, or could you, like I said, consider a guy like SGA as most improved. But we'll go with your award winner for this particular award, and I'm interested to see who you've picked.
Oh, me first?
Yeah.
Alright. So, my most improved player of the year, I went with Jalen Brunson.
Ooh.
Like, once you mentioned, like, you could go on the route of Shea Gilgeous, but, like, I just hate that about the NBA voting, I guess. Like, the most improved player, it shouldn't go to guys like Ja Morant, Anthony Edwards, who are just bound to break out. Like, everybody knows that, like, they're bound to break out in the superstardom. People don't expect, or maybe some people do, but the casual fan does not expect Jalen Brunson to come to this New York Knicks team, arguably the best Knicks team of the decade, largely because of Jalen Brunson. Like, yeah, I just feel like so many people were questioning whether Jalen was the right fit for this Knicks team, but they were questioning whether he deserved the contract, and I think he's shown his worth every cent. Like, he's been so good for them. He's almost averaging around 24-6, 6-6, and then last season he averaged 16-4. So he's taken what's that? That's a 8-point jump, and he's still giving you 6 assists, 4 rebounds, and on the defensive side of the ball, he's very important. And he was 100% to me the biggest All-Star snub. He probably deserved it, I reckon, over Julius Randle. And I know Julius, like, in his own right, he's an NBA star. He killed it yesterday. He had like 50-something points. But I think Brunson coming in, he has more of an influence over the New York Knicks than Julius Randle. And yeah, so I think you could go on the route also, once again, of Lauri Markkanen, who's had just as big as a jump as Jalen Brunson. But the Knicks, as of when I made this these picks, I don't know what they are now, but a couple of days ago they were 41-30, and the Jazz are fighting for the play-in. So I went with the route of the New York Knicks winning and how Brunson influences that over Lauri Markkanen and the Utah Jazz. So yeah, that's my pick.
I like the pick. I like the justification. But I don't agree with... Or, not that I don't agree with it, but it's not my pick for the award. Fair.
You go on Markkanen, called it.
Yeah, I went with Lowry. And the reason being is, if you look at his previous year, he was basically almost out of the... I wouldn't say he's out of the rotation, but, you know, where he was in his career, he's already 6 or 7 years in his career. I think where I sort of, I guess, justify why he gets it over Jalen Brunson is Jalen Brunson just got paid by the Knicks. You know, whether it had something to do with his dad being a coach, you know, whatever it may be, and that played a part in them obviously paying him a bit extra. I think they sort of, by paying you that amount of money in a 4-year deal, you're kind of expected to perform and deliver. And I kind of think they expected him to maybe make that jump, especially in the playoffs. You saw what he did against the Jazz where he dropped 40 points when Luka was out of that playoff series, and then he dropped another 30 odd before Luka came back. So I think they kind of knew what level Jalen Brunson could reach, if that makes sense. But for me, what surprised a lot of people about Lauri Markkanen was, again, he was only averaging 14 points last year, 14.6, and his efficiency was down. He was probably being played out of position. They were probably trying to play him as a small forward, where realistically he's a power forward. So that was impacting him. And again, I think because he was a high draft pick, and then he's fallen back down to a level where people are considering him a bust, considering him to be maybe not a bust as such, but not living up to the expectation of a 7th pick. Then to come back this year, not only to jump up your points per game by over 10, your shooting splits. He's shooting 50% from the field, 40% from 3, and he's just under, I think, probably around the 80% mark without looking at it. I'm guessing he would be around that mark for his 3 throws. He's nearly 50, 40, 90 on 25 points per game and 8 rebounds, and he's helped the Jazz team, who were initially in the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes, get into even a playoff, a play-in position, when realistically speaking, you could have thought that they might have been contending for the number 1 or number 2 pick in the draft this year. So that's my justification for it. Again, it's just more so the fact that I think the ascension of Jalen Brunson in the playoffs last year and then getting that contract, kind of people predicted his come up, whereas Lauri Markkanen went from basically started from the bottom, and now he's here. You know what I mean? Quote Drake. But yeah, I mean, Drizzy Drake. Let's go. But you can literally make the argument for either of them. But I think for me, that's where the stronger justification comes in for Lauri, just on the basis, like I said, that of all the reasons that I just mentioned then. But it's probably a lot tighter than people make it out to be, especially with the record that the Knicks do have, and being that they're in the playoff hunt and they've probably secured themselves a playoff spot, unless something completely capitulates. But it's a line ball one, I think. There, it depends on who you're speaking to. And
can I play devil's advocate real quick for Brunson?
Go for it.
To be fair, they did pay him, but I genuinely think the Knicks paid Brunson because they're out of luck, because they don't get big names. Since Carmelo Anthony, they haven't really got anyone. They go after guys like KD, Kyrie, even guys in trades. You heard the Donovan Mitchell rumors, I'm sure, before he went to Cleveland. They tried their best to get him, but they're kind of forced to pay, I reckon, guys like Brunson, because they're not the team in New York at this point. And so I don't think they necessarily paid him and expected him to be this good. And I don't think the fans, maybe the fans did, I don't know, maybe they didn't, but I remember it was a bold thing when they signed Brunson. It was an argument. A lot of people were saying, does he deserve that contract? And you said, Markkanen was averaging 50, 40, 90. I'm looking here now, Brunson's shooting 58.7 from the field, 41% from the 3, and around 84 from the free throw line. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents in Brunson being the most improved player. But Lauri definitely has his case as well. If it's a 2-way tie, I'm not mad.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind if they handed 2 trophies out like they've done for Rookie of the Year in the past. But for me, I think what cements Lauri's position is the fact that Julius Randle's taken a lot of attention away from Jalen Brunson. You know what I mean? Jalen Brunson hasn't been necessarily the first option. You look at a guy like Lauri Markkanen, he's come into that team and he's basically had to be the first option. So he's getting the toughest matchup on the defensive end every single night, because they know that, yes, they got guys like Taylor Horton-Tucker, and a few of the other guys that can put the ball in the bucket. But at the end of the day, they know that the number one target on the scouting report every single night for the opposition is Lauri Markkanen. At the end of the day, that's my justification. That's your justification for Jalen Brunson. They're both reasonable arguments that can be made, and I guess we'll find out who ends up taking the award come closure of the season. So be interesting to find out.
So moving on to the Rookie of the Year picks, I don't think this is an argument. I love Mathurin, but ultimately He just never really got the opportunity to start this season. They picked guys like Nembhard. It's a weird name to say, but Andrew Nembhard to start the season. And Benedict, he kind of played that 6-man role. To me, if he did start, I think it would be more of a debate of who's Rookie of the Year. And he has had a phenomenal rookie season, but Banchero, he's putting up practically 27 and 4. The Orlando Magic, they're much improved, I'd say. And it's not all credit to Banchero, because the emergence of Bol, Markel Fultz, even guys like Franz Wagner, who's had a phenomenal season. But yeah, I just don't really think it's in a debate here.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you as well, to be honest, because he's my pick. He's been my pick for a fair few months now, probably from the start of the season, when there wasn't really many guys that were like starting, that were putting up the production that Paolo was. And I think he's tapered off a bit, but I think that's because, again, the defenses are honing in on him, knowing that he's the number one option on that team and the number one scoring threat. And I guess for me, you could make the argument that guys like Jalen Williams could have made a late push, but again, they didn't start the season the way they did. And Paolo's production on a greater scale has probably allowed him to really put himself in that position to be the Rookie of the Year. So again, arguments can be made for the other two guys, including Benedict Mathurin and Jalen Williams, but I think this was a pretty easy one at the end to give to Paolo.
So moving on to the 6-Man of the Year award. This one was a real tough one. Of course, there's guys who kind of led the charge early, like Russell Westbrook, but have kind of died down. I've kind of gone towards the side where ultimately I've involved Winnie into it, and my pick is Malcolm Brogdon. I don't think stats really do it justice, because he's taken Boston to another level. He's real reliable. He serves as a primary scorer when JT and Jaylen Brown are out. And come playoff time, I think consistently, if he's performing at a high level, he'll do them wonders, and he can be like a main piece for why they make a charge towards the finals. He's shooting 45% from 3 and borderline 50% from the field. And yeah, I think he's well and truly the barometer for this Celtics team, and could be the reason why they make a charge to the NBA Finals appearance.
Can't really say I disagree with that. There was one other guy. Before I go into that, my pick is also Malcolm Brogdon. Again, like you said, the stats compared to last year's 6-Man of the Year, where Tyler Hero took that award, it's the stats were definitely a big drop off in terms of like the production that Tyler Hero put forward as a 6-Man of the Year compared to what Malcolm Brogdon's done. But again, they're different players, and it's to be expected. But I guess my justification with Malcolm Brogdon, again, he's 48% from the field, 45% from 3. So he's definitely super efficient with his production, 14, 4, and 3. Again, this is a guy that when he was at the Pacers before Halliburton got traded, he was averaging 20 and 8 a game. You know what I mean? He's not a kind of guy that can is just there to make up numbers. He can definitely be a productive starter, but I think he's taken on that role, taken it with 2 hands, and really, I guess, embraced the role of being that 6-man and being that spark plug off the bench for them, and a guy that can really settle their offense when guys like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are off the court. And he's done an amazing job, like you mentioned, and helped them to win 50 games this year, and again, may possibly make a deep push into the playoffs, possibly reach the finals. We don't know. We'll see what plays out. But again, he's done his job as a 6-man perfectly into a T. The only other guy in this particular instance that may challenge him or may have an argument is Emmanuel Quickley. I don't think he's going to win it. Zach Lowe, he's big on him, and he reckons that he's more important to the Knicks, and he offers more off the bench to the Knicks than Malcolm Brogdon does to the Celtics. I don't agree with him on that, only because, again, you got guys like Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle who are on the court, and again, without them, I don't think the Knicks are the same team. And again, yes, you can make the case that Emmanuel quickly provides that spark. He's got that intensity. He's got a bit of a different style of game to Malcolm Brogdon. Malcolm Brogdon's more of a low-key kind of, he's got that old man style of game, you know what I mean? But Emmanuel quickly's got that swagger, that energy that obviously can... Correct, exactly right. So they are two different players. They got pretty comparable stats. Malcolm Brogdon's a bit more efficient with the shooting side of it, and in terms of being able to be that true point guard for a team. So that's where, and probably on the defensive side, I think he's a really solid defender still to this day, and that's what he came into the league known for. But yeah, again, you can make the case for either of them, but I think Malcolm Brogdon will have it wrapped up come the awards night. But again, it's good to see Emmanuel Quickly's come up and to see that he's improving year on year as a player. And I'm really excited to see how he can continue to develop. But Malcolm Brogdon for both of us. And now moving on to Defensive Player of the Year. So this one was a tough one to weigh up. Again, yeah, probably the Defensive Player of the Year award is probably one of the toughest because you see year in and year out guys that, again, not statistically... showing up in bright lights with their block numbers and their steal numbers, but they end up winning. Like guys like Tyson Chandler, for example, they didn't have the most appealing stats from like a steals and blocks perspective, but what they did for their team as a defensive anchor probably cemented them. Same as Marc Gasol, guys like that. So this one was tough, but I'm going to have to give it to Brook Lopez this year. Again, it's debatable because I know that guys like Jaren Jackson are right up there, and Jaren Jackson's actually the favorite to win the award from a lot of bookmakers in the US. But for me, Brook Lopez, being that the Bucks are the best team in the East, one of the best records in the league, defensive anchor for that team in that drop coverage that they do play, for him to be able to block the amount of shots that he does, contest the amount of shots that he does, and help affect the trajectory of those shots that they don't go in. Even if they get the shot off, it's a bad shot a lot of the time because he's got the length right in your face. Pause. I just think what he brings in terms of structuring that defense. Again, I know you got guys like Giannis and Drew, which might discredit him as the defensive player of the year because basically they could make the argument and play devil's advocate and say, oh look, you got Giannis and Drew Holiday, two elite defenders. Like, how is that not, or how does it make a justification for Brook to be the defensive player of the year? But I think him being leader of the total block shots, contesting the most shots in the league, and just I guess having that versatility to be able to come out to the perimeter when he needs to. He's not obviously known for that, but again, he can go out to the perimeter and contest and close out on shooters when he needs to. So I think what he's brought to that team and in the fact that he's done it in such a late stage of his career as well, I think that's the reason why I give him the award.
So my Defensive Player of the Year, I've gone the other way. I picked Jaren Jackson Jr. To me, Jaren's averaging 3.1 blocks per game with a steal. And I just think when you take him away from that Memphis team, we saw in those first 14 games, Memphis were around the 20 mark for defensive ranking. And when Jaren Jackson came back for a large portion of the season, they were actually first with Jaren Jackson. And although that's declined and they're around top 6 now, I just think that Jaren Jackson Jr.'s defensive impact is just as good as Brook Lopez or higher. All he has to do is stay out of foul trouble, and I think he's good. But yeah, recently he's been getting into a lot of foul trouble. But ultimately, I mean, he leads the league in blocks. His defensive rating as well, he leads the league in that. And defensive win shares, which is another thing he leads the league in. So, look, he plays around 27 to 28 minutes a night, which sometimes is largely due to him being in foul trouble. But you could use this argument that Jaren Jackson, what he's actually doing is pretty historic because nobody ever who logs under 30 minutes played a night has won the Defensive Player of the Year, except for Michael Cooper, who won like 36 years ago. So Yeah, I think what Jaren Jackson's been able to do this season is very impressive, and I got
I
him
think it's
taking on the defensive
yeah,
player of the year.
it's definitely pretty safe pick. I mean, you could make the argument that Brook Lopez pick's pretty safe as well, seeing as though that a lot of the, I mean, like I said, it's tough to make the case. I guess like how you played devil's advocate with me with Jalen Brunson and Larry Markkinen. I'm going to play devil's advocate here. I could say that yes, he's having the impact in the time that he is on the court, but as a true defensive anchor and as a guy that really needs to be there for his team defensively, you can't have a guy like that getting consistently into foul trouble the way he does, because again, if he's not on the floor, no matter how good he is in those 28 minutes, if he's not on the floor for the remaining, let's say 8 to 10 minutes extra that he could be on the floor, that could be the difference between the Grizzlies winning a playoff series or winning a key playoff game, and the difference between them being eliminated, you know what I mean, or reaching the finals. So to me, his impact is unquestionable, and it's undisputed in my eyes. Like I think he's hands down been an amazing defender this year. But again, if you really want to be known to be the defensive player of the year, you need to be on the court. And no matter how productive you are in such a short period of time that you are on the NBA floor, you need to be there for your team in the late stages of the game. And if you're fouling out in the start of the fourth quarter, or like in the third quarter, or halfway through the fourth quarter, you're not there for those clutch moments, and that could cost your team a title going down the stretch.
No, 100%. No, what you said there, more than valid. I 100% agree. But yeah, no, I literally cannot argue with anything you just said there. You're spot on.
Like I said, I do.
I've used the Michael Cooper.
Yeah, that's like I said.
That's like my case, but
I don't.
It's not like it is. Yeah, what you said is valid.
I don't think personally that whatever you said to justify Jaren Jackson's case was great. I was just been playing devil's advocate. You know what I mean? But again, in the sense that what he has done when he's on the court, it's unheard of, especially like you said, the last 30 years for a guy to not. For no guys to be able to do that and win Defensive Player of the Year with that kind of production, it speaks volumes about his ability on the defensive side, and the fact that he's so young, he's only going to get better as well. So now moving on to Coach of the Year. So we've gotten all the player awards done except for the MVP, because we're going to leave that to last along with the All-NBA teams. So we've got the Coach of the Year award, which again it's a pretty subjective award. It's very strange as well. As you saw like a few years ago, Dwayne Casey wins it and then he gets fired. So I don't know, like it kind of, whether you win the award, does it really mean much? You know what I mean? But I think it still goes to show, what the coach can bring to an organization, and a change of coach and a change of system can definitely help turn the fortunes of a franchise around. And that's played a big part in who I've selected as my coach of the year. So my coach of the year, Mike Brown from the Sacramento Kings. So the reason why is you're looking at a team who was out of the playoffs for, I think it was about 15, it might have been more than that. It might have been 16, 17 years since they've been in the playoffs last, if not longer. Might have been 20 years. I'll have to fact check that. But a team like that to be constantly out of the playoffs, constantly in the running for lottery spots, and for a guy like Mike Brown to come in and just change the whole culture of the team, you know what I mean? He's brought this swagger about it. He's had confidence in the young guys. He's brought that very like laid back kind of relationship with the players. I mean, he's probably hard on them when he needs to be, but I feel like from what I've seen and what I've heard from him in interviews, and from what I've heard from the players in the organization, a lot of them respect him highly, and he's more like a father figure to these guys, and I think that's helped them get to where they've gotten. Obviously being the third seed in the West, they were second with that loss yesterday. They've obviously moved down a spot, but for them to be in the running to possibly win the West after where they've been for years and years, and had bad coaches after bad coach. Like, yes, I mean, Dave Yeager was a decent coach, but Luke Walton, trash. For someone to hire him, as a coach for that organization, and to be fortunate enough to get a guy like Mike Brown, who's previously won Coach of the Year under when he was with the Cleveland Cavaliers and when he was playing when LeBron James was playing under him. It's a testament to him to come back after a hiatus in the league and to win the award, in my opinion, which he should win it.
I want to play devil's advocate here, and I want to say Mike Brown or John Mazzulla are going to take home the award, but I've also gone with Mike Brown. The Kings haven't made the playoffs for 16 years, and I think that just speaks for itself. They're the second seed in the West. Their first winning record since 2006. And he's just a culture setter. We see when the Kings win, they have that defensive player of the game chain. Light the beam, the whole thing. I think he's really brought that brotherhood to the Sacramento Kings. And I don't know how far they're going to go in the playoffs or how good they'll be for the next coming seasons. But even for someone who's a Lakers fan, conference rival, one of my best friends goes for the Kings. We're always arguing. But, you just got to give them credit at this point. They're the second seed, and Mike Brown's made them that much better. So
100%. And just to add to that, when they were at the Olympics, when was it? 2021. It was meant to be 2020, but 2 years ago when the Olympics were on, he was coaching Nigeria, and they got the victory over the US in that exhibition match before the Olympics took place. And I know it was an exhibition game, and the US took time to adjust, but it just shows how good a coach he is if he can take a team. Yes, they had NBA talent. Yeah, they did have NBA talent playing for them, but at the end of the day, not to the level that the US had. And for him to be able to tactically match what the US was doing on their side of the ball and to be able to come away with victory, it's a credit to him as a coach. And again, I think it was actually, I'm quite surprised he wasn't an option as a head coach from numerous teams looking for one over the last few years. So all credit to him. And now, on to the big one. The one that's been talked about in the media for the last 2 weeks, constantly, every single day on First Take on ESPN, like no tomorrow. The MVP. This one's going to be very controversial. Again, you can split hairs here and work out who your MVP is. And you still will probably cop a lot of flack for it. So either way, whichever way you decide to go down on this, you're probably going to cop some criticism, even if you're not a voter. So yeah, going into it, we'll get right into it then. So my vote.
Keen to hear what you have to say. Keen to hear.
Drum roll. It's Nikola Jokic.
Alright.
And I'm going to give my justification for it. So, this one, again, firstly, let me put why I think Embiid has a case for it. So there's a few weeks left to play, and there's a couple of matchups that may sway this in a particular direction. So you've got the Philly-Denver matchup on March 27th and the Philly-Milwaukee game on April 2nd. So depending on how that goes, that will probably determine who the MVP is. Personally speaking, I don't think this in terms of my own opinion, but I think that the way the media is progressing it and the way they're trying to put forward this case, Joel Embiid will end up being the MVP. But in my opinion, the reason why I think Jokic will win it is for the following. But before that, the reason why Embiid's case is strong is he's been runner-up the last 2 years. He's the league's leading scorer, and he's an anchor of a top 6 defense. And he's currently in the middle of a 10-game scoring run that has only been matched twice in the century. He also has the Sixers battling for the number 2 seed with the same number of wins as Jokic's Nuggets. So that's a reason why you could make the case for Embiid. But for me personally, the reason why I think he wins is because of the following. So this is not a best player award. It's the measure of value and who's the most valuable player, which is to say the team context should matter. So you often hear arguments suggesting a player shouldn't be punished for having a strong supporting cast. And yes, while I agree with that to a degree, in a call this close, it becomes difficult, if not outright disingenuous, to argue that a player whose team falls completely off a cliff when he leaves the floor isn't inherently more valuable than a player whose team remains positive even in his absence. So it's another way of asking, who is the least disposable? So through this prism, a much clearer picture, and thus a leading candidate emerges, and that for me is Jokic. It's always been Jokic. Jokic's on and off numbers have of course been touted, and I'm not providing anything new here, but this is part of the problem. People get tired of the same evidence, and the same way they get tired of the same answer. So when Jokic is on the floor, the Nuggets outscore the opponents by 13.3 points per 100 possessions. And when he isn't on the floor, the Nuggets get outscored 13.8 points per 100 possessions. Put another way, the Nuggets operate as the best team in the league by a mile with Jokic, and the worst team in the league also by a mile without him. You can say these numbers are more of a reflection of Denver's weak bench, but that's exactly what makes Jokic so valuable within the context of these circumstances. Denver cannot survive without him. The Bucks, on the other hand, remain a net positive team without Giannis. You might say the Sixers falling by 10.4 points per 100 possessions without Embiid is something, until you do the Denver math and realize the Nuggets fall by over 27 points per 100 without Jokic. Around draft time, we love to invoke the terms of floor and ceiling. Denver doesn't have a floor with Jokic. Remove him from the equation, and you basically fall into a black hole with that Nuggets team. But he also qualifies as the biggest ceiling raiser. So as long as Jokic is on the floor, no matter who he's with, they boast a higher net rating than Philly with Embiid and Harden playing together, and Milwaukee with Giannis, Drew Holiday, and Brook Lopez on the floor. Even if you take away Jokic's two best teammates in Aaron Gordon and Jamal Murray, the Nuggets at plus 11.4 per 100 still qualify as more a statistically dominating team than the full-strength Bucks or Sixers. Again, this is where the word statistically is going to lose some people. They're tired of all the advanced numbers. Basketball isn't played on a spreadsheet. They'll say, watch the games. To this, I would agree. If you watch the Nuggets with and without Jokic, you don't need a spreadsheet. But if you don't watch the Nuggets, or you don't watch them as much as the Sixers or Bucks, then you're being willfully ignorant by dismissing or even diminishing these numbers. They are not lying. And they are also not, by the way, meant to disparage the considerable merits of Embiid or Antetokounmpo. That's the part that always dirties these debates. In an effort to build up one case, we end up tearing the others down. All three of these guys are MVP level players, having MVP worthy seasons. In fact, that's a statement that can be made about no fewer than 10 guys this season. Maybe more. The top end talent pool has never been deeper, and that's hands down, you can see that throughout the league. Which is why these debates become so complicated. We're trying to split the finest of hairs, as I mentioned earlier, but anytime you're trying to figure out something complicated, the best approach to doing so, whenever possible, is to break things down into their simplest forms. If we do that, Jokic will win. He's the simplest answer, and in my experience, the simple answer is usually synonymous with the right one. And that is my take on the MVP race. But put it simply though, like if I'm going to go back to that, put it simply, I think we talk about it like being the best player award, like I mentioned. It's more about who's valuable, and again, you've got to
take him
MVP.
off their team.
They're not going to compete. Even that's like why I could make the case literally for Luka to be MVP, because arguably he's more valuable to that Mavs team than Joel Embiid is to the Sixers team, or that Jokic is to the Nuggets team, because of the fact that you got guys like Doncic, who are playing with guys who are role players, who are bench players, who have never made an all-star team in their lives. You got guys like Embiid, who are playing with a guy like James Harden, who's a top 5 player arguably in the league, or top 10 player, and was an MVP winner, should have won 2 MVPs. That's where this consideration about most valuable comes into play. And I think, personally speaking, if you take all of the stuff that I mentioned there into consideration, that hands down puts Jokic as the most valuable in this case.
Yeah, I think like you're spot on. Like you take, like you had the stats to prove it, but you take Jokic out of Denver Nuggets. They're a significantly worse team without Jokic, but in comparison to Giannis and Joel Embiid, who obviously are the three front runners. But look, I know everybody's talking about who's the MVP. Is it Embiid? Is it Jokic? To me, it's neither. I think Giannis deserves to be a 2-time MVP. But, before I get into Giannis and why I think he's the MVP, I just want to acknowledge Nikola Jokic because he is having a fantastic, obviously, a historical season. I mean, the Nuggets, once again, everybody knows they're the first seed. Nikola's putting up a triple-double, but it's not even just that. Like, he's arguably putting up career numbers, which are 25, 12, and 10, but then he's shooting 63% from the field and borderline 40% from three, which, crazy. 43% from three 40% from three, 63 from the field with the triple-double, unheard of. But, it's obviously extremely close. Either three are deserving, Embiid, Giannis, or Nikola Jokic. Not everybody will be happy. I feel like the media narrative, they're definitely pushing the Embiid for MVP, specifically of recently. But I really do think that it's out of Jokic and Giannis. The Bucks, you don't really need to account winning into this, but the Bucks, they are the best team in the league probably as of now. They have the best record in the league. And even with the downfall of Chris Middleton, I think Giannis has just taken to another level that he's already reached. We thought he reached his ceiling, but he's taken it to another level. It sounds so cliche, but 32, 12, and 6. I know it's not great to just look at numbers side by side, but 32, 12, and 6 compared to 25, 12, and 10. He's putting up he's putting up the least amount of minutes in comparison to Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid. Out of all three of them, he's averaging the least amount of minutes and least amount of minutes played. And they have the best record in the league, the Milwaukee Bucks.
One of the best defenses.
If it was a two-way to three-way tie, one of the best defenses in the league. And that's mainly because of Giannis, who I left out of my all-defensive team. Brook Lopez, Drew Holiday. I'm not going to give Giannis all the credit there, which, look, I probably should because he's my MVP. But I'm not going to do that because I don't think he is the primary reason why. But, if it was a three-way tie, I'm not going to be mad. But you haven't really made the best claim for Giannis right there. I just think he's the best player in the world. And I think the Bucks are the best team. And he's given me every reason why I think he could and should win an MVP again.
The way I look at it and the way I could make a claim against Jokic is, again, the reason why I don't think he'll win it, even though I do believe he'll win it, I'm just saying if I'm thinking from a voter's perspective and guys in the media that vote and guys and girls in the media that vote for this stuff, ultimately the way I look at it, it's voter fatigue is a big part of it. Again, even guys like LeBron. Even guys like LeBron James, they, over the years, haven't won 3 in a row, where he realistically could have won 4 or 5 in a row, you know what I mean? Hence his dominance over that period of time. And you got other guys, like Michael Jordan could have realistically won 10 MVPs, you got Kobe, who should have won more than one. You got guys like Shaq and Allen Iverson, realistically speaking, probably could have won a few more MVPs. But the way things go in the NBA is media plays a big part, recency bias plays a big part, and voter fatigue plays a big part. One thing that I'm not a big fan of, though, in the whole MVP race is them factoring in playoff success and playoff results.
You can't because it's a regular season award,
But that's what a lot of the guys on ESPN and on these sports talk shows are advocating for. It's but I think it's because we held Giannis in such a regard where when he won his MVPs, his back-to-back MVPs, everyone was saying that he shouldn't have won him because, they were, not that he shouldn't have won it, but they were piling more pressure and saying, how can we put this guy on such a pedestal now when he hasn't had playoff success? So I think it's only fair that he went on and won his championship and has proven to the naysayers that he does deserve to be amongst the best players in the world. You can make the case for any three of these guys, and if it wasn't that they all had the same season that they are having at the same time, then there's a clear winner in all three of them. If each of these guys had this season when none of the other guys did, then it's a clear-cut winner. But because it's so tight, that's where these hairs start getting split, nitpicking starts to happen, and it's a really tough call. But I think we're doing a disservice and an injustice to a lot of these guys by saying that they're not deserving, or we're trying to downplay how good of a season each of these guys have had because we're trying to distinguish a clear MVP win, and I don't think that's fair in its own right, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. And just very quickly going off what you said, it's obviously a regular season award, and I know a lot of my friends they are NBA casuals. Some of them won't admit it, but they go towards the route that Nikola Jokic, he doesn't deserve it because he hasn't really gone that far in the playoffs. I don't know, he hasn't had a healthy MPJ, Jamal Murray, in the past couple of years, obviously. And once again, they're the first seed. It's a regular season award. He's put up amazing numbers, and they're any chance, to be honest, this year to compete for an NBA championship if there's any year. So I think Jokic is more than deserving. Obviously Embiid is too, and obviously Giannis is too. So three guys. It'll be very interesting to see who wins the MVP. Moving on from the MVP award, we're going to move towards our All-NBA teams. Now, this one is really interesting because obviously there's three teams. Unlike the old defense and our rookie teams, this one is three teams. So I got this one right. Pretty happy with my picks. I do have some notable mentions who didn't make the cut, who now looking back on, there's one specific player who I'm just looking at it now and thinking, how did I mess up that bad and not put him on either three of these teams? But nevertheless, I did what I did, and I left them off. So with the third All-NBA team, so I've done this point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center. Alright, sweet. So at point guard, I got Kyrie Irving. I think he's having a career year, and even with all that media controversy, he's kind of played through it, and he's putting up fantastic numbers. I'm not exactly sure what they are, but he's killing it. I think he's having a career year. Even with the whole trade, I think he's ultimately a pretty good teammate. He's found a home at Dallas. Can they compete for a championship? We'll see. But he's my starting point guard. At the 2, we got SGA, who's also having a career year. And if Thunder weren't competing for a play-in position and they were a playoff contender, he'd definitely get a lot more recognition. At the small forward position, we got none other than DeMar DeRozan. I think he sneaks in the All-NBA third team. It just sounds weird to say that he's All-NBA once again, but I just don't know who I would have over him. I could have gone the route of going with Paul George or Jimmy Butler, but I think DeMar deserves it over these two guys just because he's been more consistent. Paul George has sat out a few games. Jimmy Butler, it was kind of a tough one, but I went with the route of DeMar DeRozan. At the power forward position, I got Julius Randle, who's been a massive part of this Knicks team, this Knicks team is probably the most successful Knicks team we've seen in a decade. So I got him at the power forward. And then at the center, Domantas Sabonis, who's having a fantastic season. And some may argue that he's the main guy on that Kings team other than De'Aaron Fox. But I probably got Fox there. But I think Sabonis is having a career year and he more than deserves to be All-NBA.
I got a few controversial ones. Yeah, so I had a difficulty with one of the positions that I was trying to pick, and I didn't know which route to go down. And I was going to go down the route of one of the players that you had there, but actually, I might have to make a change here. Just quietly. No, I don't know.
Just tell me what it was, though. Tell me if it's.
I will.
Camera. I just need to know.
No, I'll tell you. I'll leave it as is, but I reckon I might have to switch this up. So third team for me, for Danko's All NBA third team. At my point guard, I got De'Aaron Fox. I think he's just had a career season. Helped the Kings get to the second seed in the West, break the playoff drought. He's been a big part of that. His clutch performances in the fourth quarter. He leads the NBA in fourth quarter points. Just in terms of what he brings to that team and that chemistry that he's built with Domantas Sabonis, I think it's a fair pick here. I probably arguably could have had him higher, but I think just the way the NBA is, how stacked the guard position is, it was tough to argue for him to be higher than the third team. But again, I'm factoring in the record, I'm factoring in the impact that he's had on that team, and it helped them obviously close out big games, which have helped them move up the standings and compete in that West for possibly the Western Conference number one seed. So my shooting guard, which they don't really like. Again, what I've noticed is they usually pick two guards, two forwards, and a center. But I've kind of done like a combo guard sort of thing here. So I've got Damian Lillard at my shooting guard.
Yeah.
So again, this one I honestly wanted to put him in the first or second team. I was almost debating having him in the first team, but what stopped me from doing that was the record of the Blazers, 31-40, which is no fault of his own. He's had a career year. He's been unbelievable all season. He's had one of the best resurgences, considering last year obviously had sat out most of the season, struggled with his injuries in the last couple of years, and to come out the way he did and to put on some historic performances and really carry that Blazers team when there was a lot of injuries around him, I think it's a testament to him. And again, I think it would be a sin to leave him out of any of the NBA teams, considering the season he's had, and to punish him for the record that the Blazers have had. So, he's my shooting guard. Now, this is where the controversy starts.
Andrew.
So, at my small forward, I got LeBron James. And I know people are going to jump on me for this, but the reason why is I just don't see how the NBA leaves him out, breaking the scoring record. Yeah. I was thinking of it from more of that perspective, you know what I mean? Like,
nah, I'm not mad at that.
I could have easily left him out, and my second option in this case would have been Jimmy Butler. But I just think, like I said, I've seen the record for the most games played whilst being named All-NBA was 41. And the second one was Chris Webber on 42. But then you've had a season a few years ago where LeBron only played 45 games, and he still made All-NBA third team. And he had a worse season that year than he did the year that he's having this year. So again, with all of that hoopla surrounding LeBron, I just don't think they would leave him off this All-NBA team. Again, it'll all depend. This is if the season finished today. So again, we'll see how many more games he plays in the lead up to the playoffs, whether we see him again this regular season. I highly doubt it. But again, that was my pick. Roast me in the comments if you want, guys, but that's that's who I've got for this one. Power forward, I've got Lauri Markkanen. Again, another resurgent career that turnaround for this guy. We spoke about it earlier in the video. A guy going from 14 points a game last year to 25 and 8 on 50, 40, 90 splits basically. Not quite the 90. I think he's about 83% from the free-throw line. But again, he's pushing that bracket, and for a guy to be then named All-Star after obviously people having doubts on him, I think it's well deserved. And my center spot for the third team is Domantas Sabonis. Again, which we both agree on. Again, if it wasn't position based, I'd have him higher because I think the impact that he's had to that Kings team has been remarkable. But again, because you got to pick three centers, I can't see anyone going ahead of Jokic and Embiid.
No, I think Danko, you're all right. Like, I don't think you're gonna get big and roasted for your picking LeBron the all third team, because I mean we'll talk about that in a bit, but I think my picks are a lot more valid more likely to get roasted. I don't know how the reactions will go after you hear my second person who I've left off my All NBA team. But to begin my All NBA second team, at the point guard position, we got Ja Morant. Now, obviously with the whole controversy, like what's happening now, like all the incidents, I don't really want to talk about it, to be honest, like get into every little detail because there's a lot to cover there. But if you exclude all that and just look at how Ja's performed on the court this season and in the amount of games he's played, I think he's played enough to where he's All-NBA material. So I got him in my All-NBA second team. At the 2, we got Donovan Mitchell. I think he's arguably been the best shooting guard in the league this season, alongside James Harden, who I've left off my All-NBA list, but I think James Harden has had a very underrated season. So we got him at the 2, and then at the small forward, you had him in your third team. I got him in my second team. Maybe I'm a biased Lakers fan, but look, LeBron James, he's All-NBA second team for me. Reason being is just I just couldn't think of other guys to put ahead in the All-NBA second team. Like, I don't want to put DeMar DeRozan in All-NBA second. I didn't want to put Paul George in All-NBA third and move DeMar up. Didn't want to put Jimmy Butler in. I could have gone the route of chucking in a certain someone who's in my first team into there, and then potentially putting Markkanen in and then moving this guy up and that guy up. But I've left LeBron James in my All-NBA second team. And then the next guy at the power forward position, another guy who hasn't really played all too much, but he's just too good to leave out of All-NBA. So we got Kevin Durant at the power forward position for All-NBA. And then at the center position, none other than Joel Embiid, who deserves to be All-NBA first team, but it's this close. It's this close. I had to leave him in the second team because of the guy above him and the other guy above him. But really, he's All-NBA first team material. I just got him in my second team. So it's really just a label, but that's my All-NBA second team.
So for my second team, again, no point guard, shooting guard, just at my guards, I've got Donovan Mitchell, and I've got Steph Curry as my shooting guard, or as my second guard. So reason for these selections, again, yes, I know Curry has been out of action for some time this season, but he still has played enough games in terms of where the lowest amount of games played was, and he'll probably surpass that now because he's back healthy again. So that was my idea of why I'd have him in, and he's just been so efficient. 29, 6 and 6, nearly 36 and 6 on ridiculous shooting splits, and the fact that he's so efficient from three, despite the fact that he jacks up the amount of threes he does, and the impact he has on that Warriors team in winning. Obviously they're struggling on the road, but I just couldn't leave him out. I think he was just too good not to have in there. So he's definitely my second guard. And Donovan Mitchell speaks for itself. 71-point game this year, has helped that Cavs team really take the next step to possibly win a finals, and to take the Cavs as far as he possibly can. And at my small forward, I've got Kevin Durant. At one of my forwards. Again, games played is going to play a big part here, but I think when he was on the court, he was arguably MVP when he was at the Brooklyn Nets, and if he didn't get injured, I think maybe that trade never takes place. Maybe Kyrie and KD are still there competing, and the Brooklyn Nets are close to the top of the Eastern Conference and not rebuilding with Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, etc. And I think we still haven't seen the best of him once it comes playoff time. If he's healthy, with that Suns team, he's going to be very damaging and dangerous. We know what KD's like around playoff time. At my power forward, I got Julius Randle. Again, he's been a very consistent figure in these All-NBA teams the last few years, and even just in terms of an All-Star caliber player. 25 and 10 this year, really upped his scoring And I think he's added a few strings to his bow in terms of his style of play and been really that number one guy that the Knicks needed and helped them obviously put him in the position where they are in this playoff hunt. And at my center, I got Joel Embiid. Again, having Jokic as my MVP, I have to put Embiid at the All-NBA second team. Otherwise, it would have been a bit strange if I select Jokic as MVP and I don't put him in the first team. So, yeah, that's pretty much my justification. But it was line ball. Whoever I would have picked for MVP there would have been in the All-NBA first team. So, that's my selections for All-NBA second team. So, I think a little bit controversial with Curry, maybe with Durant, but I think the stats speak for themselves when they're out on the court and what they can do and what kind of players they have been this season.
No, I think you've done very well there. Like, I did this a couple of days ago. I think it was before Steph's return. I wasn't too sure like when he would come back, so I left him off my list. I've left a couple players off. I'll just say it like now, may as well. Like, Dame's not in my All-NBA team. I think he's having a career year probably, which it's so tough. But I was just looking at like the Blazers are sitting him. How many games has he played? Not 100% sure, but he hasn't played. Like, it's just so hard. Like, the NBA needs to do a games restriction for All-NBA, like you said, 100%. Because I mean, it was just so hard to put like. I could have put Dame ahead of Kyrie. I could have put Dame ahead of Ja in the second team. But then it got to the first team and it was too difficult to put Dame in because I just don't think he's All-NBA ahead of the guys that I have. So to begin my All-NBA first team at the point guard position, I've put Luka Doncic. Needs no explanation. Well, I'll just move on to the next one. At the shooting guard, Jaylen Brown, who... is extreme. Yeah, I don't know is that controversial. Probably a little bit.
Yeah,
but
a little
it's bit. Just when like he's just so good. JT's out. They don't need JT. Like, Jaylen Brown serves as that primary option. We all know that. Like, sometimes I'm watching Celtics games and I'm like, is Tatum better than Jaylen Brown? Like, I don't know. He is, but. Sometimes I question whether he actually is.
You can make a legitimate case.
Yeah, you can make the case. And I maybe I'm too much of a Jaylen Brown fan to leave him off, but I think he's All-NBA first-team material. Did you have him in your teams?
No.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe that has to be like... Maybe that's a wild take, but...
I was almost considering putting him on my All-NBA third team at small forward.
Yeah.
Instead of LeBron. But I put LeBron because I'm like, realistically, I think that's how the voters are going to think, you know what I mean? Like, as much as it should be my vote, but I'll kind of put my voters cap on. I'm like, how are these guys going to perceive this, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Maybe I've put too much into account winning because I've left Dame off the list and Blazers aren't having the greatest season. I've put Celtics. I've put Jaylen Brown, in my team. Celtics are killing it. And then I've got like Ja Morant, my second team starter. Oh, wait, what? I've got Ja Morant, my All-NBA second team. And I've got... Yeah. So I've put a little bit of... I put winning into factor a bit too much maybe, but we'll just move on to the next pick. And that's Jason Tatum, who we all know, like... Once upon a time, Jason Tatum was that MVP candidate. Now it's kind of gone to that three and Nikola, Giannis, and Embiid. But Tatum certainly, like, technically he's in the race. He probably won't win it, but he's having a phenomenal season. Celtics are obviously killing it this year. Tatum's averaging around like 34 points. Nah, I don't even know. He's averaging
30. I think he's just on 30 or 31. I think it's around that mark. Maybe 30.5. I'm probably guessing.
Yeah, he's averaging like in the 30s. He's just killing it. So I had to put him at my small forward. At the power forward, we got none other than Giannis Antetokounmpo. How could I leave this man off the list? Had to put him in. I mean, he's my MVP, so I had to put him in that All-NBA first team. And then at the center position, we got Nikola Jokic, who I mean, 25, 10 and 12, first seed in the West. I don't think this really needs any justification.
Besides Jaylen Brown, I think that one you could probably argue, because I didn't have him in any of my teams like I mentioned, so that one you can make the case, but I think, yeah, if you factor it in a little bit differently, it might have been a different sort of setup for yourself if you obviously factored in all the other variables that we could have at the time. But for my All-NBA first team selections, same as you, I've got Luka Doncic as my point guard. It's pretty self-explanatory. Arguably should have been in the MVP conversation in it to a deeper extent, because if you really knuckle down and look at what the true meaning of an MVP is, he's well and truly it. And at my shooting guard, this one is a bit controversial, I think. Not as controversial as Jaylen Brown, but I have SGA at my 2 guard. I think what he's done for that Oklahoma City team brought him to the cusp of automatic playoff berth as the number 1 option, getting the number 1 defender every single night, averaging close to 32 points per game, 5 and 6, whatever it is on top of it, with pretty good efficiency. It speaks for itself, and he's really changed the fortunes of that franchise around, and they've probably got one of the brightest futures in the NBA, the Oklahoma City Thunder. At my small forward, I've got Jason Tatum. Again, this one is pretty self-explanatory. He's probably 4th in the MVP. And if it wasn't for the guys that we mentioned earlier, Embiid, Jokic, and Giannis having the seasons that they've had, he probably comes home. Him or Doncic would probably come home with their first MVP. But just the way that the NBA is going, how solid everyone's playing, and the progression that everyone's had, it doesn't go into his hands this year. But I think him and Doncic will definitely have an MVP in the near future. At my power forward, I got Giannis. Again, this is another self-explanatory one. I think he's unanimous. And the way he's played this year has just been incredible. It led the Bucks to the number 1 seed in the East and the entire NBA. And I think he's just been a remarkable leader and an unstoppable force. And I think come playoff time, he's going to show that to a full extent, like he did in the last few years. And my final pick, my center, which is my MVP for this year, and that's Nikola Jokic. Just the way he's played this year, averaging a triple-double, stat padding, as Kendrick Perkins will say, which is complete BS. He's just... Did he actually? Is that legit? 'Cause I did see the tweet though. I did see the tweet that came out, and I don't know if that was legitimate or not. He actually got the sack. I'm not surprised. It's absolute. He was the worst analyst ever, to be honest. But yeah, in terms of Nikola Jokic's production, it's it speaks for itself. Like I mentioned in my take earlier about who I think should have won MVP. Went into the details of why he's so valuable to that franchise and to that team. And come playoff time, I think he's going to really try and prove the doubters wrong, to really show that he can be a dominant player even in that playoff stage when defenses change, schemes change, the game slows down a bit. I think that suits his style of play anyway. So I'm hoping he has a big playoff postseason run and can take it from there. But that's my All-NBA first team, and I think that one was probably the easiest. Besides SGA, I think that one you could have been line ball with whether you put Steph or Dame as the other guard. But I think SGA is just the way he's come along the back end of this season, especially in the clutch. I think it's more than deserved. So it was tough trying to come up with all these awards and all these different teams and trying to fit in where everyone belongs. But I think we did a pretty good job here. And let us know in the comments what you guys think and whether you would change anything regarding our award winners, whether it be our teams. You let us know. Let us know any other ideas you'd like for content going forward in the future. We plan to do this 2 times a week, Wednesdays and Sundays. Wednesdays will be more of a podcast sort of setup like this, where we'll do a longer topic and talk. And then on the Sunday, we usually do a rehash and recap of like major talking points that have happened over the last few days in the league. So let us know what other content you'd like to see, and give us any feedback on what you think we could improve on. But appreciate you guys having us today. My name's Danko.
Marcus.
And this has been Bench Mob Podcast. We out.